Deaths in Glenmorach Manor, a fiction novel. Written by Shirley, read by Sir Lawrence Olivier. This audiobook was narrated using synthetic voice technology provided by 11 Labs. Chapter 5. I was officially in charge of the murder investigation at Glenmorach Manor. I was hired by Lord Wallace himself to find the true motive and the murderer of his son. That night, on my way back to my room, the flicker of candlelight stretched shadows across the walls. Then something caught my eye. A letter had been slipped under my door. The corridor was so still. I bent down to pick it up. There was no name or clue about who might have left it, but one thing was clear. Someone covertly wanted to send me a message. I opened the envelope slowly, as though the contents could unravel a dangerous secret. The letter inside was neatly handwritten, leaving no trace of the writer's identity. My fingers trembled slightly as I read the message. The letter made my pulse quicken, a chill creeping up my spine. The message was written in Scottish Gaelic. Being an Englishman, I had no idea how to understand the message. I whispered like a chant, syllable by syllable. Was it meaningless? No, surely it meant something. Then I decided to sneak quietly into the library to find one book that could help me interpret the message. After searching for a while, I came across an old, dusty book with a cracked spine, hidden behind a row of law books. The book was black with gilt letters in Celtic knots. 1901, Dweller's Illustrated Gaelic English Dictionary. I flipped it and opened it with a thump. The pages were old and fragile, and the prints were small, but I scanned for words. Tonight, at 11. Win. Sight. Vision. My eyes widen. A puzzle, yes, but not unsolvable. Make your way to the place of the wind. Place of the wind, I whispered to myself. The west balcony. That's where the wind always howls the hardest. Tonight, at 11, I checked the mantel clock. And the last part, there. A vision once hidden will open. I got goosebumps when I realized that I wasn't just solving the puzzle, but now I had become a part of it. I grabbed my note and put the dictionary back on the shelf. I had no time to waste. The west balcony was waiting, and I was about to see something hidden show itself. The old grandfather clock chimed. It was 11 p.m. sharp. Our mansion was dark and still. I tried to find a perfect hiding spot so that I could keep an eye on the west balcony where the wind was blowing fiercely that night. My heart was pounding and beating in sync with the antique clock ticking somewhere as I awaited what might unfold there. Out of the blue, I saw Rosie step onto the balcony, glancing nervously over her shoulder. She pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders, but her breath was shallow, not from the cold, but from something more. Then I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps. It was Robert. He was coming from the dark corridor. His movements were slow and deliberate. There was a certain familiarity in the way he approached her, the quiet grace of someone who had come there countless times before. They stood face to face in the moonlight, the tension palpable, as though the very air was holding its breath. I heard their voices, low at first, like ghosts, then sharper, real. Rosie spoke to him. It's dangerous for us to meet like this, Robert. Especially after Benjamin. She paused. What if anyone finds out? Rosie's face was pale in the moonlight, lips tight, shoulders drawn. Robert Wallace, the noble's second son, was quiet and reserved. It was a surprise I didn't expect at all. His jacket was unbuttoned, and his hair was disheveled. He approached and embraced her head on his chest and kissed her forehead. They thought they were alone. I was stunned to see what had been revealed in front of me. The thought of Rosie being so desperate for Benjamin's attention had now been proven wrong. Or perhaps it was not completely wrong. And faintly I heard Robert asking her, "Were you in the library that night, Rosie, when Ben was found dead?" Rosie was shaking her head. "What? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't even remember going there at all that day." I could only catch fragments of their conversation because of the strong wind, and they were standing quite a distance from my hiding spot. And I saw Rosie widen her eyes, staring at Robert as if she were accused of being the murderer of his brother. Then she turned her body and took a step forward. Her gaze was empty as she looked out toward the garden, the wind whipping her skirt. I watched every twitch of her fingers, every shift of Robert's eyes. Then she whispered, "I didn't kill Ben." Robert was silent. He didn't even respond to her. Rosie turned her head to face Robert and spoke to him again, her tone earnest as she tried to convince him. "Robert, I swear I didn't kill Ben." Then they murmured about something, and what I heard was Rosie saying, "I really didn't go there. You have to believe me, Robert." Robert continued. His tone was colder than before. "You could be hanged to death for that kind of mistake." A long silence stretched between them. Rosie looked away. Guilt, fear, or both? Robert said, and his tone was softened now, "You need to be careful. I can't keep protecting you." I leaned forward ever so slightly, holding my breath. What were they talking about? Suddenly, Rosie looked in my direction, squinting her eyes as if sensing something. Rosie whispered, "Did you hear that?" Robert said, "It's just the wind." Or so they thought. They left the balcony and disappeared back into the mansion, unaware that I'd overheard parts of their conversation from my hiding spot. I sneaked quietly back to my bedroom. My thoughts kept wandering, reflecting on what I had just witnessed on the west balcony. I began analyzing all the motives that could lead Rosie or Robert to be suspects in Benjamin's murder last night. Until now, I had no idea there was something between Rosie and Robert, though I had sensed Rosie was desperate for getting Benjamin's attention. But the sender of this letter knew something was going on between Robert and Rosie. This message told a different story, one penned by an unknown hand. Whoever that was, they wanted me to see the truth that Robert and Rosie were spending so much time together, hiding in the shadows of the mansion. It seemed they had been more involved than anyone had realized. I couldn't help but wonder if the strange behavior was connected to Benjamin's death. Had the affair been more than just a secret romance? Was there something darker lurking beneath the surface? The mystery was no longer just about a murder. It was about secrets that spanned years, about love, jealousy, and perhaps inheritance. A chilling thought crossed my mind. Had Rosie killed Benjamin out of jealousy for his affection toward Gracie? If what I'd seen on the balcony was the truth, her involvement with Robert suddenly made sense. With Benjamin gone, Robert would be the next heir apparent for the Wallace inheritance, making him a strategic piece in whatever game Rosie was playing. She wasn't just a quiet caregiver. She was sharp, calculating, and deliberate, weaving her plans with careful precision. However, Robert could also be a strong suspect in his older brother's murder, as he may have felt that Lord Wallace favored Benjamin more as the eldest son, and was supposed to inherit the wealth of the Wallace family. Not to mention his jealousy, given how obvious it was that Rosie also pursued Benjamin's attention. I eventually fell asleep, and when I woke up, sunlight was already streaming into my room through the window. This morning my mind was sharp, and the weight of the case pressed heavily on me. I knew what I had to do next. I needed to search Robert's and Rosie's rooms while they were away. Time was of the essence, and I couldn't afford to miss anything. Previously, I had privately met Lord Wallace and asked for permission to search every room in the mansion, including those of all family members and live-in workers, if necessary. He had granted me the permission. That morning, Lord Wallace asked Rosie to take him for a walk in the garden. I thought I would start with Rosie's room. The door creaked open, and I entered cautiously, the atmosphere in the room full of a sense of anticipation. The room was simple yet warm, with delicate curtains and a small bed tucked in the corner. I began my search methodically, my gloved hands moving through her belongings. It wasn't long before I found something. A letter. It was tucked into the folds of an old book on her nightstand. My fingers hovered over it for a moment before I pulled it out. The letter was addressed to Rosie from Benjamin 2 years ago. The handwriting was neat but firm. As I read, it became clear that Benjamin had tried to let Rosie down gently, though the words carried a weight of finality. Dear Rosie, you are a very beautiful woman, but I cannot give you what you want. We really appreciate and thank you for your hard work in taking care of my father. But love is a different matter. Love cannot be forced. I was hoping to feel the same way towards you, but I don't. I do not love you in the way you want. I hope you understand. You must move on for your own sake. You will find someone who can return your feelings, but unfortunately, I am not that person. Benjamin, my heart sank as I read those words. They were compassionate, but resolute. Rosie's unrequited feelings for Benjamin had been crushing her from the inside out, and as a very ambitious woman, it seemed she still had been unable to accept his rejection, even after she pursued Robert as her backup plan. With Rosie's room searched, I moved on to Robert's. He was working in the vineyard, which meant I had some time to explore. His room was spacious and lavish, yet an unmistakable chill lingered in the air, as if grandeur had replaced warmth. I scoured the room, moving carefully through his belongings. Bookshelves lined the walls, and the large bed sat in the center of the room. But I found nothing that stood out. Frustration began to set in as I opened every drawer, checked under the bed, and sifted through the papers scattered across the desk. There was no sign of anything out of place, no incriminating evidence to suggest Robert's involvement in the crime. I almost gave up. Perhaps the search was pointless. But then, as I stepped backward, I felt it. A slight creak beneath my foot. The sound echoed in the otherwise silent room. It came from a small section of the floor near the bed. Curiosity piqued. I stepped again, confirming it was hollow. I quickly moved the bed slightly, and as I did, I revealed a small, hidden section of floor. My heart raced as I pried it open with my fingers. Inside, hidden beneath the boards, was a small metal key. I knew instantly what it was. It was the spare key to the hidden door to the library, the very key I had been trusted to keep during the investigation. Robert had the spare hidden here all along. He never mentioned to me that there was a spare key. And the discovery made my suspicions run even deeper. Robert had lied about the key. He was the Shadow Man. I quickly headed to the secret passage in the library to conduct an investigation. As I stood in the library once more, surrounded by the lingering scent of old books and candle wax, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was just the beginning. There were things hidden in plain sight, things that others had overlooked. I made my way to the hidden door and stepped into the secret passage. I had to know more. It had been too convenient for someone to have gained access to the library through it without being seen. The secret passage connected the library to several rooms in the mansion. I tested the latch carefully before entering the narrow passage. This time, I moved more cautiously, following the path with greater attention. My footsteps echoed in the dark, and soon enough I found myself at a door that attracted my attention, one that led into Robert Wallace's study. The room was furnished elegantly, but was cold. I could smell the scent of parchment and ink. Everything was meticulously arranged. My gaze swept across the space, looking for anything out of place. I had already noticed that Robert had been acting strangely the previous evening, and my curiosity had been piqued. My instincts told me there was something here he did not want me to find. Could Robert have been involved? I wasn't sure, but the possibility couldn't be ignored. The desk in the corner immediately caught my attention. Slipping on my gloves, I moved toward it and began sorting through the neatly stacked papers, carefully opening each drawer. Most of the documents were ordinary. Ledgers, letters about the vineyard, and personal notes that seemed irrelevant. Then, as I reached the last drawer, I combed through its contents, checking every corner. Among a stack of envelopes and old letters, my fingers brushed against something soft. I pulled it out. An embroidered woman's handkerchief, delicately folded, but stained with blood. The sight of it sent a chill down my spine. This handkerchief had an elegantly embroidered R monogram that stood out starkly against the bloodstain. It was clear that it had been intentionally hidden, placed beneath a pile of papers, and tucked away to avoid detection. The initials R could only point to one person, Rosie Taylor. My suspicions grew as I held the handkerchief in my hands. This was the break I needed. I carefully folded the blood-stained handkerchief and put it into an evidence bag, as I would have it tested later. But for now, it was the best lead I had. As I turned to leave the study, I felt the weight of the case settled on my shoulders once more. The shadow man, the secret passages, Robert's wet, muddy boots found in the mudroom on the night of the murder, the blood-stained handkerchief. It seemed like everything pointed to Robert Wallace and Rosie Taylor. It all pointed to them as the prime suspects. No, it was too easy for me. Way too easy. I refused to jump to conclusions too quickly. I felt compelled to conduct a more thorough and comprehensive investigation. Everyone within Glenmorach Manor could be a suspect in Benjamin's murder. I refused to jump to conclusions too quickly. I felt compelled to conduct a more thorough and comprehensive investigation. My next move was clear. I needed to confront them to get to the truth, and I would not stop until the truth was revealed.